Hello and welcome to Nobody Meets Somebody, the podcast where two comedians
who are currently nobody
meet somebody.
who is famous. My name is Mary Picarazzi.
And I'm Tanveer Arora.
And today's guest, we got to speak with the awesome Jesse Kellerman. He's an American novelist and playwright. He's the author of the popular Clay Edison novels, which I am a huge fan of. I'm so excited for this interview.
Me too. I haven't read any of his books, but I heard a lot from you, and I'm super excited to talk to this guy.
All right, let's not waste any time. Let's talk with Jesse. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, we are super excited. I'm going to control myself. Well, I'm going to try to. As always, I have my questions in my handy dandy sparkly hat. Tanveer, what do you got?
I used to have the Pyrex cup. Not anymore. It's just a piece of paper now.
Why? Why don't you want us to get sponsorship?
You had a Pyrex cup?
I had a Pyrex cup.
We normally have a Pyrex cup because we're trying to get a Pyrex sponsorship.
I was gonna say that's a good sponsorship to have. That's really good.
Thank you. See,
I'll bring it back. I'll bring it back next time.
First question of the day. Sure. What is your favorite exercise?
What's my favorite exercise? Wow. Oh, you just opened a huge can of worms there. Massive. Because I'm like a fitness junkie. So my favorite exercise is the deadlift. I love the deadlift.
Wow.
And my back, as I get older, it's not my back's favorite exercise, but it still remains my favorite exercise.
What is the heaviest you've ever done?
The heaviest deadlift I've ever done is 575 pounds.
Wow.
I did that for an online competition last year. And then about a week later, I injured my back and I couldn't deadlift for 4 months, but it was worth it for the glory. It was worth it for that one shining moment of glory.
You said you ride with your dad. How does that work? Like working with a family member, usually 90% of the cases is a no-no, and especially with your dad, how's the equation?
So before you answer, just so our viewers know, because we started recording when we had that conversation. So you work with your dad. Your dad's obviously Jonathan Kellerman, phenomenal author, du jour, my hero. And you guys have a great series together, the Clay Edison series. So how does that process work?
So I will say that one of the things that allows me to feel comfortable writing with him is that prior to beginning to collaborate with him, I had a career of my own. I was writing standalone novels. I wrote 5 standalone novels before we ever decided to collaborate. And I think that sort of gave me the confidence to feel like I was entering this partnership as an equal, as a peer, rather than as an apprentice. So in terms of feeling like we're on an equal footing, look, obviously he's my dad, and that dynamic never goes away. Right?
Yeah.
He's always my dad, right? I will say that in the process of working together, he's revealed himself to be really egoless. The man's written 40 bestsellers. Like he could very easily just press the veto anytime he disagreed with something I said or override me, and he does not do that. We talk as true partners, and I give him all the credit in the world for that. I mean, I think part of that is because the guy's had 40 bestsellers. He doesn't have a lot to prove. So it's not a power struggle. Is not who needs that. One thing that I think is really important to our continuing ability to collaborate and still get along is that we recognize that the relationship predates and will postdate the collaboration. So we'll be we started collaborating. We wrote 2 books, these sort of weird fantasy detective novels called the Golem series. And then we've done the 4th Clay Edison is actually coming out this summer. And we've got 3 more under contract. So it'll be nine books in 12 years by the time that contract ends. But even then, in the grand scheme of things, it's a relatively small slice of my life, and it's an even smaller slice of his. And so, I think we're careful. It's not that we aren't afraid to sort of push each other, but we're careful in how we, in what battles we choose to fight. And I think probably it makes us more receptive to the other person because, I'm always, I think a lot of artistic partnerships, you're coming to the table like you're coming to war. You know what I mean? Like I'm going to get right. And my successful collaboration, and that's probably how I used to be when I was a young writer, now, and he's not my only collaborator. I have another friend who I collaborate with, and that guy is also an established writer. And I come to the table with this sort of like sense of excitement and joy, like, wow, what are they going to do? It's like working with great jazz musicians. You don't just sit there and wait for your solo. If you're in the music, you're listening to what the other people are doing and you're responding to them, and it's an organic process. We don't always get to the same exact conclusion. Our strengths are different as writers. He's much more sort of loose and spontaneous. I'm super anal and like organized. Like I bullet point everything, and he's just loosen up. He's like always trying to get me to loosen up. But that's helpful, because his spontaneity balances my neuroticism, and my need for order sort of like can corral him when he's sort of going off the path. So we play to our strengths in that respect. Does it mean that I want to only write with him for the rest of my life? Of course not. I do miss having sort of the total control that I had when I was writing standalones, and I will get back to them someday. It's just we're under contract right now, so
yeah. Well, legally, I have to do this, Dad.
Right.
No, but it's interesting though, because like you meant obviously dad and son, you already have that dynamic, but growing up, we always we have an idea of what our parents are, right, when they have us. How has been writing with him explored or basically opened up an idea of how he was before he had you, like his individual self?
That's a great question. No one's ever asked me that question. That's seriously, that's a great question. So I'll say that there have been two experiences that have really opened me up to my dad as a human being as opposed to my dad as a dad. The writing aspect of it for sure, because there you see sort of like, I'm sensitive to how his personality emerges in subtle ways. And it's sort of like, it's a little bit of a key to his unconscious. And there's things that I can probably perceive about the books that not everybody else can perceive, because I have like the key, which is like this many years of exposure to what his personality is. So if he'll make a joke, right, then no one's going to get, but I'm like, oh, he's referring to that thing. So it's opened me up to my dad as, I think especially when you've had as much success as he has, he looks like a brand almost, you know what I mean, as opposed to a human being, right? In the way that like real visible celebrities, like they cease to be people in a certain sense. They just become who their exterior. And so that's been a revealing part of the writing process. Becoming a father has been much more it has put me much more deeply in touch, though, even more than the writing, with sort of like who he was at my age. I look back and I think, because we had our first kids at almost exactly the same age. And I'll tell you, the first thing I did when my son came home from the hospital is I called my dad and I said, I'm so sorry for everything I ever did to you. And so it's made me aware of his, like what it was like for him to be juggling this stuff as a young guy, and the frailty and the anxiety and the humanity of, not that he would ever necessarily admit this, because he's still going to be, my dad for me. But, in the same way that I don't like put my anxiety on my kids, that's not their job.
Yeah.
But now
later down the road when they're older,
right? I mean, obviously, some people do, but I think my dad is it's almost the opposite. Like he does not want us to. He doesn't like to to feel like he's leaning on us at all. And so that experience of being a new father and feeling very like uncertain and very vulnerable, that sort of key, like everything clicked. I was like, oh, he's gone through this too. So,
all right, next question. Your biggest pet peeve?
Oh boy.
Don't say rescheduling.
That's funny. Let's see. My biggest pet peeve. Okay, I won't call it a pet peeve. What I'm going to call it is, I think a thing that I feel is missing in the world today is a lack of curiosity and a fear of ideas that make you uncomfortable. I think that I believe it's really important to expose yourself to ideas that are different from the ones you already have. It doesn't mean that you automatically sell out everything you believe every time a new idea comes along. But the fear of the idea that an idea is damaging or threatening somehow, I find disturbing. I think so. I was raised in in a sort of observant Jewish tradition, and I studied a lot of Talmud growing up. And if you're not familiar with what the Talmud is, it's like a giant book of Jewish laws. But that doesn't really describe it very well, because there's a lot of other stuff in there. There's stories and there's like recipes. There's all sorts of weird stuff in there.
It's a starter pack.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the core principles of sort of like that kind of study and intellectual universe is that you can have two ideas that exist that contradict, but they're both still true. Right. And I think that's a really important thing for people to sort of wrestle with. And so I guess the increasingly siloed nature of conversation, particularly on social media, really bothers me.
Good question. What is something you can't live without? Obviously, we're presuming your family's already a given.
Family and all that stuff.
Yeah,
Okay. Oxygen and
you love everybody. I got it. Yeah.
All of those things.
I like how you said oxygen. Nice.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have thought of it.
It's true. Let's see. What is like a material object I can't live without. Or can it be like a thing? Like I would say is like it would be music. I love music. That would be like when I was in second grade, I think I had a teacher ask us, I don't know why she chose to ask this. She actually polled the class, would you rather be blind or deaf? This really happened. I swear to God, this really happened. This really happened. And I know, right? Can you imagine? So I was in second grade, so it must have been like 1985 or something like that. And everybody said deaf except me. I was the only person who I would give up my eyesight and still be able to hear, both because music is so important to me and because language is so important to me. Like, and so like that's sort of like, I think writers, there's like, you've got like visual writers and you've got audio writers, is that like a coherent concept? Like there's some writers you're reading them and you can see that they're like, that they're just they're doing a painting in words. Right. Yeah. Right? Right. And so but for me, it's about the rhythm of the sentences and it's about how those things move. And so all of that stuff is very important to me. So I would say music as an abstraction. It's like a core thing. I would say, what can I not live without? Probably my weights. I love my weights.
You say visual writer. Is your dad a visual writer? His descriptions are so much. It's like, it's really looking at a picture.
Yeah, so I think that's you hit it on the head. He was a painter. He is a painter. He was trained as a cartoonist. He drew a daily cartoon for the Bruin when he was at UCLA. He drew 5 cartoons a week, five times a week. He had to come up with a cartoon, and he still paints. And I can't paint or draw at all. I mean, I can appreciate. But that's not sort of my modality of interacting with the world. That's, Mary, you've given me an insight here. This is another way in which sort of like our styles fit together that is different about us. So
100% different. Yeah.
Okay, here's some random question.
Okay.
What is the most ridiculous thing someone has convinced you to do?
have children? What is the most ridiculous thing someone has convinced me to do? Let's see.
We've all done something stupid with some.
No, I'm having trouble. I'm having trouble deciding.
Which one?
Yeah, probably the dumbest thing I ever did was like, I don't think my parents know this. So, when I was like right after I got my license, so I had a Volvo station wagon. That was the car that I drove, with my mom's Volvo station wagon. And I went out with my friend, and we were sober, but we were on the freeway in LA. And he kept like egging me on to go faster and faster and faster. And I think I was going down the 405 at 130 miles an hour. Wow. at night. It's the kind of thing you like, you're 16 and a half years old. And you're like, oh, this seems really fun. This seems like a great idea. So that was definitely the stupidest thing and I remember the car started to vibrate and shake.
What car?
Because
Oh, you said, yeah, Volkswagen.
because it was a Volvo,
Volvo,
and it was
Volvo.
like, because it was like yelling at me in Swedish, like, we don't do this. Like, this is not what we are made for. You know? So that was definitely dumb. Let's see,
you might get grounded now, just so you know.
I know.
If your parents watch this, you might get grounded now, retroactively.
The most ridiculous thing I was ever convinced to do was move to San Diego. My wife, she went to do her medical training there, and we were like, yeah, this seems like a great idea. Let's move to San Diego. And after 5.5 years in San Diego, I was like in a semi-comatose state, and so that's definitely up there. I don't know. There we go.
That's pretty good. Yeah, we went from something super like crazy to like, but I moved to a place that I was mad about.
Because here's why. Because when you grow up in Los Angeles, you have this idea. I don't know where either of you are originally from, but if you grow up in San Diego, California, you have this idea that San Diego is a hick town, right? Mm-hmm. And so when my wife wanted to move there, I was like, we're gonna go there. I'm gonna give San Diego a fresh start. I'm gonna look at it with, completely blank slate. And after 5 minutes, I was like, get me out of this fucking hick town.
I think that's such a California thing you just said. Saying San Diego is a hick town. I'm from Texas, and I can show you a hick town, and it is not San Diego. It does not have the biggest aquarium in the world, by the way.
Look, all I'm saying is Anchorman is a documentary. Anchorman is not a feature film. It is a documentary.
I can show you plenty of towns that have more cows than people.
My sister lives in Texas, so I'm really actually like, she lives in Austin, which I don't know if that counts.
Yeah,
but
okay.
she's been there for she's been there for 5 years. So my only experience of Texas has been on book tour. I remember I went to Houston 1 year, and I have terrible allergies, and I went, and Houston, I guess, has like really, really explosive pollen count in the spring. And so I went to do this reading, and on book tour. So the classic book tour experience is you go in and there's like 3 people and one of them is asleep. And that's what it was like. So it was the mystery store in Houston, and the people who run the store were absolutely lovely. And I think it was a big crowd. It was like 8 people, and so one was asleep. One was asleep, and I got up there, and my allergies just hit me. So I'm trying to read, and tears and snot, like every orifice in my face is like spitting, and it was humiliating. And like, also it was a small room, so I'm like right in front.
Most ridiculous thing someone has convinced you to do.
have children? What is the most ridiculous thing someone has convinced me to do? Let's see.
We've all done something stupid with some.
No, I'm having trouble deciding.
Which one?
Yeah, probably the dumbest thing I ever did was like, I don't think my parents know this. So when I was like right after I got my license, so I had a Volvo station wagon. That was the car that I drove, with my mom's Volvo station wagon. And I went out with my friend, and we were sober, but we were on the freeway in LA. And he kept like egging me on to go faster and faster and faster. And I think I was going down the 405 at 130 miles an hour. Wow. At night. It's the kind of thing you like, you're 16 and a half years old, and you're like, oh, this seems really fun. This seems like a great idea. So that was definitely the stupidest thing and I remember the car started to vibrate and shake.
Because it's Volkswagen.
Because it was a Volvo, and it was like, because it was like yelling at me in Swedish, like, we don't do this. Like, this is not what we are made for. So that was definitely dumb. Let's see.
You might get grounded now, just so you know.
I know.
If your parents watch this, you might get grounded now, retroactively.
The most ridiculous thing I was ever convinced to do was move to San Diego. My wife, she went to do her medical training there, and we were like, yeah, this seems like a great idea. Let's move to San Diego. And after 5.5 years in San Diego, I was like in a semi-comatose state. And so that's definitely up there. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. There we go.
That's pretty good. Yeah. we went from something super like crazy to like,
Yeah.
oh, but I moved to a place that I was mad about.
Because here's why. Because when you grow up in Los Angeles, you have this idea. I don't know where either of you are originally from, but if you grew up in Southern California, you have this idea that San Diego is a hick town, right? Mm-hmm. And so when my wife wanted to move there, I was like, we're gonna go there. I'm gonna give San Diego a fresh start. I'm gonna look at it with completely blank slate. And after 5 minutes, I was like, get me out of this fucking hick town.
I think that's such a California thing you just said. Saying San Diego is a hick town. I'm from Texas, and I can show you a hick town, and it is not San Diego. It does not have the biggest aquarium in the world, by the way.
Look, all I'm saying is Anchorman is a documentary. Anchorman is not a feature film. It is a documentary.
I can show you plenty of towns that have more cows than people.
My sister lives in Texas, so I'm really actually like, she lives in Austin, which I don't know if that counts.
Yeah,
but
okay.
she's been there for she's been there for 5 years. So my only experience of Texas has been on book tour. I remember I went to Houston 1 year, and I have terrible allergies, and I went, and Houston, I guess, has like really, really explosive pollen count in the spring, and so I went to do this reading, and on book tour. So the classic book tour experience is you go in and there's like 3 people and one of them is asleep. And that's was like, so it was the mystery store in Houston, and the people who run the store were absolutely lovely. And I think it was a big crowd. It was like 8 people, and but one was asleep. One was asleep. And I got up there and my allergies just hit me. So I'm trying to read, and tears and snot, like every orifice in my face is like spitting, and it was humiliating. And like, also it was a small room, so I'm like right in front of these people, and I'm groping for tissues, and I'm like mopping my face.
What is the one thing that you're looking forward to do?
Well, obviously, I like to travel. Like, I haven't gone anywhere at all. I would love to. So now that I am vaccinated, my parents, I think I mentioned my parents were here over the weekend. I gave my parents a hug for the first time in a year. I have 3 sisters, and I'm very close with them, and I have not given any of them a hug in like a year and a half. Okay. It's been so that would be nice. I had a nephew who I didn't meet for a long time. I've met him now. But I think that actually for me, it's like, just because my job is so solitary, it's really important for my mental health to get out and like go to a store and buy a thing and like look at a person and look at their actual face and say, hi, how are you? Because those, obviously you miss the big things, but those small sort of crumbs of human interaction are like really important to the health of your soul, I think, and they've definitely been missing for me. So it's all the big things that everybody's missing, but it's also just like this little stuff, because otherwise the only people I'm talking to are imaginary, and it gets really, really depressing after a while. You're right, you forget like it's like being a normal functioning human being is a skill that atrophies if you don't make use of it.
We're comedians. We're fully aware of that.
So you said travel. What's your what vacation or what city or what country are you looking forward to travel?
So with little kids, so my wife and I did a lot of like sort of the big far away trips before we had children, which was a good decision. We did our honeymoon in Southeast Asia. One of the places we went to was Burma, which I know things are very unstable there now, but this was before it had opened up at all. And there was no cell phone contact. There was we were totally unprepared for when we got there. Like what it was like, just the feeling of being in a country that was like, essentially locked down, and people having to whisper when they wanted to talk about things that weren't important to them. That was a big shock,
Right.
especially as an American. You're just, wow, why can't I say this? I can say whatever I want. And I was like, shut the fuck up, like, you know. So that was an eye opener, you know. And I think travel is extremely salutary. We went to India a few years after that. We did
Where'd
not.
you go in India? Before he asked, where'd you go in
Where
India?
did I go?
I just kept it to myself. I was like, I'll ask him later.
I know you're gonna
I'm like
ask.
every person who brings up India, I'm like, where did he go? So I was like, no, this time I wouldn't ask. I would not.
I stayed with
Got
my
it.
family. So I was we were in. So we start off in Mumbai. We were. Is that where you're from?
Yeah.
Yeah, Mumbai's intense.
It is.
It's super intense. I loved India, but it is like not a place for the faint of heart, especially
you live on the edge every single day.
Yeah. So it was amazing. So we were in Mumbai. We went to Ajanta and Ellora. We went to Agra, Delhi, Udaipur, Jaipur, and Varanasi. Varanasi was crazy. Varanasi was like. That was also like, so, you know, also I come from a religious background. So like to be in this place where like, it's such like everything is so intensely spiritual and so intensely like there's nothing that doesn't mean something there.
Yeah.
So it felt, even though it was very different, it felt familiar in a certain way because there's people living their lives sort of like according to like this extremely specific set of guidelines.
Right.
So that was an amazing trip. And I went to Shanghai for research, and I went to Shan as well when I was in China, but that was just by myself. But we've never gotten a chance. We've never been to Japan. I would really like to go to Japan.
Nice.
I've never been to sort of like South America. I've been like down like Patagonia and stuff. I'd like to go down there. I mean, and you know, anywhere. I've done Europe. Like I've been in Europe. I've done all that stuff. I don't have as great an interest in Western Europe as I do in Eastern Europe. Like the places where my family comes from, all of like the old country. Right. You know, like my mom and I have a deal that we're gonna take this trip together. This like family history trip. We're gonna go. We're gonna like make a list of all the places. We're gonna be like, oh, here they killed us here, and here they killed us there, and here they killed us there.
All right. So my last question before we go into our lightning round is going to be: if you weren't an author, what would you be?
I would be a chef. That's easy. I love to cook. Nice. I love to cook. It's you get to eat what you make, and I guess if you're a chef, you probably don't get to eat what you make, but I get to eat what I make. And it's creative. It's one of my two like primary hobbies are like lifting weights and cooking because they're totally nonverbal. And cooking, it's really like at the end of the day, I'm like, I cannot do words anymore. Like that is it. So to be able to do something that's creative but also nonverbal is really helpful for me.
That's cool. That's a very interesting perspective. I hadn't even thought about that. I was like, yeah, it is nonverbal.
What kind of food? What kind of food do you like to cook?
Everything. I mean, so we have 3 kids, and one is 11, and he'll eat anything. Like he'll eat spicy food. He'll eat anything. So I love to cook for him, and we have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, and they eat nothing at all. So I like, we have a rotation of like 5 things that I make all the time. And then occasionally my wife and the 11-year-old were like, we can't take this anymore. And we'll break out and we'll give the 2 youngest ones peanut butter sandwiches. And I'll make like, spicy Korean rice bowls, or I'll make like, what did I do? I love Moroccan food. So like, like eggs with harissa or something like that. But, I keep kosher. So I have sort of like a restricted, list of ingredients.
Right.
And one of the things that like is my mission is like push as hard against the boundaries as possible. Cause I'm at heart, I'm like, a sensualist, and I just want to eat as much as possible. So,
nice.
I think it's funny. You can tell you did not grow up in a Mexican household because you all got the same food and then you just starve. So, so you're a much nicer parent than I am, because I'm like, I have 1 child and I'm like, oh, remember, this is what we're eating. And if you don't want it, then you don't eat. That's it.
We try. I didn't try it that well, but every dinner became a hostage negotiation, and so I was like, forget this. I can't do this anymore.
Once again, you're just a better person than I am, because I just put the mom voice on and was like, we're not doing this. That's it. Surprisingly, she eats everything now. It's amazing how that works.
Well, that's the result. If you don't coddle this nonsense, like they'll figure it out eventually. I just don't have the.
But there's a part of you. There's a part of you is like, oh, they're only going to be this age for such a small time. I'll just deal with it. And then it just gets crazy when they're 10. And now my daughter's like, I would like some sushi, Mom. I'm like, what the? What?
Yeah, so like my youngest son, he just he has the loudest, shrillest voice, and he just does not give a shit about social convention. So if you give him, he's just like really, really impolite when it comes to this kind of stuff. So if he doesn't want it, it's just this banshee scream of utter despair, and it's I just don't want to hear it. Okay, shut up.
I'm done. Yeah. All right, so we're gonna go into the lightning round. These are gonna be just 4 or 5, maybe 6 questions because I can't count. 6 questions. Really quick, no thinking, just quick answers, and we'll move to the next one.
I'm gonna be terrible on this. Okay, go ahead.
You will fail. You'll be graded. So just so you know, phone call or text message.
Text message.
What is on your playlist right now? Music playlist.
Aaron Parks, jazz musician, jazz pianist.
Favorite color?
Purple.
Worst food?
Oh God. I'm allergic to shellfish. Does that count? I'm allergic to shellfish.
Yeah, that would be worst. Yes.
Nice
favorite all-time show?
The Wire, for sure.
If you were on a desert island, what are 3 things that you would take with you?
And we're not family. Okay, I'm taking my weights. I'm taking.
Assume family is what he meant. Assume family.
Okay, I'm taking my weights. I'm taking a shitload of food. And I'm taking a helicopter so I can leave.
Fair enough. All right, that was our lightning round. Woo!
Yeah.
I can sense that helicopter who was driving or whatever you call it, flying that helicopter. You're like, right. There's too much weights here. You need to you need to just drop down some weights, man.
Yeah. You could just see the plane go down into the ocean.
Oh, that would be the worst way. Yeah, no. Well, what happened? Well, I wanted to get really buff.
Death by his own vanity. That's amazing.
All right. Well, we definitely want to thank you for being on the show today. We have one last question that we do ask every guest. So we definitely want to make sure folks check you out on Facebook. You can look you up on Jesse Kellerman, and your awesome website, which has all your up-to-date, all your books that have been listed, the 5 singles and the ones with your dad. Yes. Half Moon Bay, you can order now, so please take advantage of that. I will be waiting for my signed copy in the mail. Thank you very much. All right, last question. When someone Googles you, what do you want your autocomplete to be?
What do I want?
Gosh. That was our most serious question. You just laughed at.
Yeah, that's like asking. That's the contemporary equivalent of asking what my epitaph to be, right?
That's kind of where I was going with that question when I wrote it, but got the cat out of the bag on that one.
It's like a digital epitaph. Let's see. I'm going to say Jesse Kellerman, man of mystery.
Nice.
Well played.
Okay.
That was a fun one.
That's good.
I actually thought, so writers, authors, I thought he's going to be a little serious, no, he was super fun. He actually made more jokes than other comedians on this podcast.
Yeah.
And he has actually seen more of India than me, which blows my mind. But that's my bad. That is my bad.
Yeah, it was such a fun. This was such an honor. I am really a huge fan. So if I fangirl, y'all can suck and deal with it. But I am just thrilled. I love his books, and to actually be able to meet him and see how pretty much down to earth and cool he is was pretty awesome. So This was fun. This was super cool. I
hope you get the signed copy of his new book.
I put it out there. We'll see. Probably not, but I'll still pay my $20 to read his book. But anyway, that's our show today. We thank you so much for watching and listening. Please subscribe. And if you really, really liked us, please share us with your family, friends, and enemies. As always, I'm Mary Picarazzi.
And I'm Tanvi Derora.